Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 4th public budget hearing of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. Can we please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And so before we begin, I just want to welcome, we have our State Senator Mike Brady here. We also have our State Rep Allison Sullivan Almeida as well. Is there anything you'd like to say before we start the hearing, or do you just want to wait until it gets underway?
Whatever makes most sense in the
Please.
Okay, yeah, whatever you know, we're glad that you're here. Thank you for coming. Also, I want to recognize that we have from the Whitman Select Board, Dr. Carl Kowalski and Justin Evans, as well as Town Administrator Mary Beth Carter, and the Chair of the FinCom, Kathleen Otina, as well as from the Hanson Select Board, we have Laura Kemet. And Ms. Kemet, is there anyone with you? I can't. Okay, just all right. So I just want to thank all of our elected representatives and the representatives from the two towns for being here as well. There's no public comment to start, so I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Marcus for his report.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Oh, wait, one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. We're being recorded by WHCA. I wanted to get in that before Stephanie jumped on me. So I'm sorry, Dr. Marcus.
No,
Go ahead.
that's okay. Thanks. I've been thinking about this moment since Mr. Tressel came into my office at Duval back in mid-December when he was checking with each of the certified superintendents to see if they'd be willing to step in. And I knew that if I said yes, that there was an enormous task ahead, both structurally as well as, importantly, financially. And there was no way that I was going to be able to do this alone. So while the work has really just begun, before presenting the proposed budget tonight, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Farrow, Dr. Seamus Schneeweiss, Dr. Godino, Mr. Hyde, and now Mr. Wells from Central Office for being there every day. For the last month, we have not stopped. And likewise to John Chenette, John Stanbrook, and members of the business office who have also nonstop been helping us to both figure out 26 and also prepare for 27. We have an incredible leadership team, and I'd like to say many thanks to the principals and our leadership team for coming together and doing the hard work of figuring out some of these difficult decisions. I'd like to thank you, the school committee, for your thoughtfulness and your focus on teaching and learning. That has been an incredibly important mission for us, and for me. I'd like to thank Jen Cruz, because she is the voice of calm and reason. Even this afternoon, when I was freaking out, she was there to make sure that everything was going to be okay and that everything was set up correctly. So thank you. I'd like to thank the parents and the community members of Whitman and Hanson, many of whom I've met and have talked about their concerns for their kids and how they want to make sure that whatever happens, that their children's education remains strong. And importantly, I'd like to thank the teachers and the staff in our schools who are working hard, enriching student learning and growth every day. While there's no joy in an extremely tight budget, there is joy in every classroom, every office, every gym and library and cafeteria, stage and field and hallway of our schools. I've seen it. I start almost every day in somebody else's building, and it is incredible to see what's happening. So with that, I'd like to share with you a preliminary budget for 27. The guidelines that we laid out for this year are really to support the goals and the strategic plan of the district, to ensure that student learning and growth are at the center of everything that we do. We have to make sure that FY27 doesn't bring forward the overspending of the past, and we have to ensure that the revenues that we're counting on and the expenses that we're planning are based on factual information and as conservative estimates as we possibly can. Our strategic plan is summarized here, and basically what it says is that we're going to do everything we can to take care of all children all the time. In a very brief amount of time, we've had to develop an understanding of all the programs that happen in Whitman-Hanson. During that time, in the last month or so, we've fully examined every single line item in the budget, and in so doing, identified what are the critical needs and what are areas for growth. We've looked at, in any way possible, areas for savings so that we can restabilize both the short term, now, and the long term, next year and beyond's budgets. And we need to do that while maintaining the educational strengths and avoiding student impacts as much as possible. A brief statistical note about who we are. This year, there are 3,423 students enrolled in our schools. That is a slow, small, but steady decline over the last several years. We are not alone. As we talked about at a recent school committee meeting, that trend is happening statewide. But we're doing okay. The overall staff, I had put at 645 in a slide recently. That included all of the coaches and other sort of seasonal folks. So the number of people who are here every day is 505. We have 7 schools with lots of kids. Some of the hard facts that we faced are that FY25 and 26 were both over-encumbered by over $1 million. We said that we were going to be able to spend a certain amount of money, and we didn't have it. The FY26 cuts that were made in November were important, were painful, but unfortunately didn't equal the overspending that we have this year by about $600,000. I want to clarify this next bullet because it was noted that it was a $4.7 million budget gap. The $4.7 million that I'm talking about here are the big costs that we are looking at overall. So there are, when we think about some of the additional things that we're going to have to deal with in terms of out-of-district tuitions, new special ed programs, healthcare costs, contractual obligations, and retirement costs, those big nuts, those big nuggets add up to $4.7 million. So it's not a gap. It's not that we're in the hole by that. Those are just some of the new costs that we're facing. Another important thing is that when we looked at the FY26 budget and we looked at payroll lines, we recognized that there were many of those lines that weren't quite right, that people were in lines that didn't quite match up with either where they were in terms of the building or what their position was now. It may have changed over time for various reasons, and so there was a lot of cleanup that needed to get done in the payroll lines. Another really important hard fact is circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is money that comes in from the state that is used to support students with significant needs who are in out-of-district placements in some way. Circuit breaker needs to be looked at as something that will support the district and support those students, but is not something where you look back in order to use to work on tuitions or things backwards, but it's really looking forwards. And if we're going to do that, then it's going to shift the way that we're budgeting as we move forward. And that's a critical piece. It's a hard fact that we have to deal with that is something we're doing now. The district really has to be careful about any financial risk that we move into in the future. And in order to do that, we have to stop whatever that additional spending is or whatever reliance we had on other sort of sources. And we have to stabilize so that we can move forward in a safe and careful way. While we're at it, in terms of hard facts, I want to clarify something else that came up a few times in the last week or so. There was this notion that we hired 30 extra paras. I don't know where that came from, but I want to clarify that in FY24, there were 107 paras. In FY25, there were 118 paras. And I know those 11 extra paras because they were in my building. We added 2 new programs that year, and that's what we needed to do in order to support those kids. In FY26, the number went down a tiny bit to 116, but then November came along, we took 10 of those folks away, and we're now at 106. In FY27, with the new programs that I'm going to share tonight, the number will be 112. So I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. Okay. When you think about budgets, and having done this several times in the past, you take this sort of model of moving upwards and onwards. The most difficult piece or place to be in terms of thinking about budget modeling is a regressive budget, where we're talking about level funding, or even worse, cutting back. And that really puts us in a place where there aren't any new positions, there's many, many more staffing cuts, things like that. A minimal budget is where you're able to not necessarily level service and do all the things that we are able to do now, but you're providing what's necessary, and there might be some limited growth. A progressive budget is where you're now looking forward and saying we can provide new programs, and we can think about how we can move the district forward in a positive way. And the advanced, those are the kinds of things that you can do when things are very rosy and sunny, or you're looking at some kind of significant increase, and that's really being able to move the district forward in a pretty powerful and profound way. For us this year, we really looked at those 3 choices toward the bottom of the modeling pyramid. If we really were in deep trouble and we were looking at a regressive budget, we'd be talking about reducing sections across all of the schools. We'd be getting rid of elective programs and co-curricular opportunities. We'd have to increase fees again. That decline in programs would be a decline in the district, which would be a decline for all of us in both towns. That regressive is maybe $1 million. It's a very tiny amount of an increase to assessments and Chapter 70 and things like that. Then there's a minimal sort of place to be. And that's really where you would have just the absolutely necessary positions. You'd have to reduce, and in this budget you'll see reductions of administration and coordination, tighter materials, and there's definitely going to be a downstream impact to teachers. And then I added in something called minimal plus, which is where I hope we get to. And that's where we can actually maintain some of those positions that we're going to talk about tonight. There'll still be tighter materials and supplies, but there'll be a little bit less teacher impact, and we might be able to support other programs that we talked about at our last meeting. A progressive budget, I think, would be great. It would help us to maintain some of those, most of the administrative positions. We actually may even be able to restore some positions that we lost. we may be able to lower fees, and there might be fewer cuts to materials. In our work creating this budget, we focused on a few different areas. What are things that we can reduce, and how are we going to do that? And what are things that need to increase, that are going to be difficulties for us moving forward in dealing with funding those different things. So you see under reductions that we came away with in looking at what November looked like, where we're at now, what our projections are for revenue, that we're looking at somewhere around $1 million worth of reductions in payroll and staffing. We also looked at how we can reduce curriculum materials. What can we actually live with moving forward next year that doesn't hobble us too badly, but allows us to sort of continue on? And that's the $260,000. Then we looked at every other line, everything that we could possibly think of, and I'll show you that further on in the presentation. And that was a reduction of another $165,000. And then very difficult decision is that we looked at, well, what can we bring back? And the answer is we can't. So at this point, being able to go forward and being able to stabilize the things that happened in November, we're not able or ready to be able to bring back. On the other side, we looked at very significant increases. That the contractual increases to the payroll is about $1.5 million. Health insurance, transportation, and custodial contracts are all coming up, and that's another $1.1 million approximately. The retirement insurance, as I noted in the Big Five, is $1.3 million. There are increased costs to special education tuitions, and again, that's not the number of students, it's the cost to the programs. And then there's the new programs themselves that we have to deal with. So to get to a place where we are able to move forward, we had to make some very difficult decisions. In terms of the actual staffing, we are looking at reducing from 2 assistant superintendents to 1. We're looking at one of the central office folks being reduced. We're looking at 3 coordinators being reduced, 2 at the secondary level and 1 at the elementary level. We're looking at the high school dean position, and what we're looking at is sort of a swap where the high school dean position is eliminated and it's replaced with a high school assistant principal. The rationale is that a high school assistant principal is able to pick up some of the evaluative and curricular things that are going to be lost when you lose 2 coordinators. We're looking at reducing the ed tech leader, who's done an incredible job in supporting us in lots of different ways. We're looking at reducing the secondary data analyst. That coincides with the elementary folks who we lost or were shifted in November. And then at the moment, we know of 1 high school retirement and Hanson Middle School duty aide that we have taken out of the budget that we're not going to refill. So those reductions brought us to a savings of, as you see, $1.181 million. The additions are that we, based on the number of students who are continuing to move into our preschool program, as well as students who are moving from the middle school up to the high school, we are going to create 2 new special education programs, so a teacher for each of those, and then 3 paraprofessionals to support those programs one at elementary and one at the high school. And that cut for the dean is swapped for the addition of the high school principal. And so those additions are about $545,000, so approximately $600,000 in savings. You get to the next thing, which is the sort of a comparison of the budgets over time. This slide sort of demonstrates not just sort of where we're at and how we're moving forward, the pink column being what is a more specific description. It also sort of represents some of the chaos in the budget that we've had in the past couple of years and how we've had to address lines that didn't quite work or specific figures that didn't quite add up. And so you'll see in certain places, FY '25, '26, and then you see in '27, and you'll see in some where, for example, at the very first line, where it's 1.664 million in '26, that drops to 1.2 million in '27. Some of that is due to the cuts that I just talked about, and some of it is due to how things were specifically laid out in the budget in the past. That's the same for instruction, where it went from 37.8 million to 39. Some of that extra cost, the 1.3 million, includes salary increases, contractual increases, and things like that. But it also includes some of the sort of paper reductions that were made that don't actually show up in how much it really costs in order to fund instruction fully. And I'll explain that when I get to the detail. So when you come to the bottom line, it's $66,980,000, 724. That is a difference of 2.416 million over last year. And that again is last year's $64,564,206 budget really has an asterisk next to it, because that figure is not really exactly how much it cost in order to run the district this year. So I think that's an important thing to note. On the next slide, which I think most folks have the little explanation at the bottom, it shows what those different areas are. So the 1,000s is administration. The 2,000s is obviously the biggest chunk of the budget. That's instruction, and that's everything from the materials to the teachers to the paraprofessionals to anything and everything that has to do with instruction, Chromebooks, things like that. The 3,000s are school services, and that includes the nurses, the athletics program, clubs, activities, things like that. The 4,000s is operations and maintenance, which I think is explanatory, but it also includes technology. So that's something that isn't necessarily clear. The 5,000s are fixed charges, and the 5,000s are things like insurance for our staff, the retirement benefits, and things like that. The 8,000s is debt service. This year, of note, is that this is the last year that we are paying for the building that we're in. So there's a $578,000 cost to this year's budget that will go away in FY '28. So that's good. And the 9,000s are tuition programs and things like that, collaboratives, et cetera. This is a bit of a description over the last many years of how our budget has grown and changed. And again, I think it's important to note that I put the asterisks over the last couple of years because I'm not entirely sure that that's how much it really cost. This is a description of the revenue that we're expecting, and I want to make sure we're clear on what you're looking at. The first two lines are the assessments to the towns. Those are based on a 5% increase on the assessment itself. And it can be a little confusing that it looks like it's a 5% increase. It's an increase to the assessment that we are charging to the towns in order to make the school district run. It's 5% of what they normally provide to the school department in order for us to run the district. It is not a 5% increase to our budget. It's to the assessment itself. The rest of the lines, busing, debt assessment, things like that, are all there. One thing of note is that there was a $244,000 line of revenue under the HVAC debt assessment, the Hanson HVAC debt assessment. That was paid off, and so that's been taken out. So that was something that we discovered in my early weeks. Another important thing to note is our Medicaid reimbursement. That line, you'll see that FY '24 and '25 was about $240,000. This year, we're looking at it being closer to 175, and so we're maintaining that same figure. So it might be something that you would look at sort of increasing from one year to the next. It's never going to increase too much, but we didn't want to go to the 24 or 25 figures until we really know for sure that 26 is going to change. So right now, as you look at the money that's come in, it's approaching that 175 figure. So I just want to clarify that. The next few figures are state aid, and those come off of what's called the cherry sheet, which is a very specific assessment from the Commonwealth. The next line in terms of homeless transportation is an estimate of how much revenue we're going to take in. We've also tried to stay conservative with that $25,000 figure. You can see in '24 that it was all the way up to 111, but then it dropped back to 25. So we're maintaining a conservative approach to that and assuming the same sort of figure of revenue coming in as last year. To clarify, on the interest income, that was the additional $65,000 that we took out was because we had taken out the ban, the bonding thing on the Whitman Middle School.
Anticipatory note?
It was a ban.
It was a ban. Yeah, it's just the other two letters, A and N.
Anticipatory note.
There it is. That because that ban has been closed and taken care of, the $65,000 in revenues was removed from the budget, and so on. So that's revenue. I also want to clarify that there are additional revenue sources, so that when we look at that sort of big number of 4.7 million, we also know that there are other things that are going to come in along with these sort of standard kinds of things. So we get money that comes in from the state and the federal government that includes all of these different grants and other kinds of sources that you see from school choice, circuit breaker, which is for special education tuitions, Title I, Title III, the IDEA, which is also special education, early childhood special ed, and then the next few lines are revolving accounts. So we bring in money from preschool tuitions, we bring in money from food services, which goes into a revolving account, and we also bring in money from building use, so rentals and things like that. So those are all sources that weren't necessarily called out or clarified in the previous budget that I wanted to draw your attention to. And I also want to make sure that I explain that in the estimation for circuit breaker for next year, Right now, this year, we are getting $2,402,000 in circuit breaker. And again, in looking at our current numbers and what we're projecting for next year, we feel that it's the safest thing is to keep that number the same. So our projection for FY27 is the number in circuit breaker that we're getting this year. We don't want to go and make assumptions or guesses that it's going to be 85% of X instead of 75% or whatever. So again, we want to take that very conservatively. This is just a quick snapshot of our schools. And then I added to this slide per request of the committee to look at the different schools and what the different sections are so that you can sort of compare the school sizes and the class sizes in each with the actual number of sections. And it's pretty easy math. So at Duval, there are 4 sections with 20 in each, so it's about 80 kids. And if you look at the slide before, it pretty much lines up. Not exact, but that shows you that. Down below, I think it's important, and again, I thank Dr. Jones for clarifying that you see at the high school, rather than sort of doing it by section, that it's really by department and how the numbers vary depending upon the courses. The preschool numbers are the 15 in the integrated sections and the 8 is the max in the sub-separate classrooms. This is an interesting note, the per pupil expenditure. If we look at our neighboring towns and the towns around us, this is how much the towns spend per pupil. If you take the overall budget and simply divide it by the number of students, and then there's some other sort of calculations in there, you get to a per pupil spending. Where we are right now, you can see is sort of about average. With the reductions that we made this year and the reductions that we're talking about making next year, that per pupil spending number is going to slide back, and it's going to be smaller.
Do we wait at the?
I think it's important to note something when we use just our area, it's important to note that we are in sort of a hot spot where some of the lowest educational spending happens. So it really is, I would ask that this is done more nationally, and I think we're in like the 13th percent or 14th, or lower. So I think that when we're talking about this, having a broader conversation, because our duty is to make these children competitive to everyone in the state, not just everyone in the area. And, you know, politics can run across town lines sometimes, and we need to ignore that. And
Sure. I'm happy to provide a statewide comparison
yeah, and
as
we
well.
can get that on
Yeah,
DESI.
typically, when I do the presentation, I try to just
Yeah,
do
East
surrounding towns.
Bridgewater is,
But, yeah, I'm happy to do that.
and Bridgewater Raynham is known for being pretty bad.
Yeah. Next steps, and before I get too much into this, I'm going to go into the sort of line-by-line budget to talk a little bit about that. But obviously is to hear from folks tonight, to continue our line-by-line analysis, which we haven't stopped doing since we began, to make sure that everything that we're putting in here is absolutely accurate. And then over the next several weeks to finalize the budget proposal, which we'll bring to the committee and eventually to the public to present that final budget. And at which point, once we have that, is to present to the town meetings and ensure that folks understand the importance of providing, as Rosemary said, the best education we possibly can. The next several pages are a detailed listing of all of the lines in our budget. They go through pretty much every single thing that we pay for. What you see in these several pages is what's called the general ledger or the general fund. What's not specifically called out or clarified in here are those additional revenues that come in. So yes, it includes Chapter 70 state aid, but you don't see a specific description of circuit breaker, for example, that's part of the overall budget. It isn't necessarily spelled out here. We are creating another document that has all of that very specifically listed, but I wanted to use the general fund. It's the same tool that we've used in the past in order to explain each and every line. And what we did this year is put in a set of notes to the right. So you'll see that almost every line has some clarification. On the very top in green, and I apologize for the folks who have it in black and white, but it's on the screen in color. The green are the revenues. That's the same set of numbers that I showed you before. The pink section are the 1,000s. That's administration, so that includes superintendent, assistant superintendent, business office, et cetera. The blue, the 2,000s, that's all the instruction, and that goes on for quite a while. The orange are the 3,000s, and that's the school services, like health services, transportation, et cetera. The yellow below that are the 4,000s, and that's the maintenance and operations. The next is the pink, the 5,000s. Those are the fixed costs like retirements and insurance. There's a little mini guy there, the green cost, and that is the debt service. And again, that number, the next year carrying 578, will go away because that's the last year for the high school. And then finally, the blue at the bottom, the 9,000s are tuitions. I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about some of the specifics that we encountered as we went through the budget. I'm not going to go through every single line, but I am going to go back and talk about each of those lines. Thank you, Jason. But I wanted to clarify the bottom line. So when you get to the bottom, you'll see that the FY26 actual with an asterisk is the $64,564,206. This year's proposed is the thing in parentheses, that is the revenues that we're expecting. So at the 5% assessment and the other figures that we talked about, it's $66,758,178. And our overall budget, all of the things that we said that we're going to take care of, as well as the things that we can't afford that we've taken out of the budget, comes to $66,980,723, a difference of, at the moment, $222,545. That, in order to make that whole, in order to not have that particular shortfall, would be, one way to look at it is about 0.25% additional on the assessments to the town. So instead of 5%, if it was 5.25, then there wouldn't be a shortfall. If you can think about that further and say, well, what about if we were higher? Then again, that's where you get to that budget modeling, and you start thinking about, well, are we at minimal? Are we at minimal plus? Can we get to progressive? So where are we at? And that really becomes the work of the committee, of the superintendent, the leadership team, over the next few months to figure out how we move forward in the best way possible. Let me just give you some examples of some of the work that we did line by line, and I'm happy to sort of answer anything line by line. So if we go back, Jason, to the top. Yep, thank you. And it's a little tricky to see on the screens, but in the paper you have the first line under the revenue that says DW School Committee Supplies, district-wide school committee supplies. So what we did is we went into Munis, the budgeting software. We looked at how much the school committee has spent over the last few years on supplies. We looked at what that cost was so far this year, being about halfway through the year, and then we extrapolated out, is it possible to reduce that number? And the answer was yes, so we reduced it by $1,000, and that's how we arrived at $1,085. There were other lines that we got to. For example, the $8,633, we questioned, what is that, and is that, is there a way to reduce that? When we looked, it was actually the specific fee for MASC to host our policies and do the support work that they do. So that is what it is. It's an actual cost, and so that stayed the same. And we went on, so on down the line, looking at things like, can we live without $4,000 in travel for a school committee? Can we live without, and you'll see as we go down, and some of them are small amounts, $1,000, $2,000, but this is the time to do it. This is the year where we are so short that in order for us to be able to get to next year, we have to look at every single one of those and say, can we do without X? Obviously, the biggest one was curriculum, materials and supplies for curriculum. That's a big cut from $533,000 to $260,000. That's a significant difference. So those are some of the big things that we had to do, and you'll see that those follow down, where we said, well, something was $6,565 in superintendent contracted services, well, they can live without $1,500 of that, and so on. So we went all the way down. There are some things where it's sort of just basic, some things that just went up, like salary increases, and so you'll see that I noted that. Those are just regular old salary increases because people are getting their standard raises. As you go further down, and I want to call your attention to, let's start at, it's called, it's right underneath, Jason, where it says 2325, and it's in blue, and it says IH para salaries. I should have numbered these pages, sorry guys. Do you see that? Okay. So that was one of the first lines that we looked at where it didn't make any sense that in 2026, Indian Head would have 416,000 in paras, Conley would have 161, and Duval would have 273. Well, I know for a fact that Duval has more paras than anybody. So how does that make sense? So what we did is went back to the actual payroll lines. We looked at every single name. The principals, bless them, took all of their staff, went through every single person, listed out exactly what their positions were, and then we recoded everything so that it actually lines up with the specific people who are in those positions now. So it looks like on that particular line that we went from 416,000 to 122. Oh my goodness, what are you doing? It's not. It's not a new cut. There are cuts built into that lower number because we cut 10 or so paras this year. So that is part of this, but it isn't anything new. It's clarifying and fixing that line so that it's correct. It actually makes sense. I also want to draw your attention to the page before that. Where it says 2304 SPED classroom teachers. So underneath that is actually general ed classroom teachers. And as we went through the budget and we looked at the presentation from February of last year, and then looked at what was actually in Munis, you'll see that I noted that there were inaccuracies in those budget lines by these round numbers that we've talked about over the past. So the first one, Indian Head classroom teachers, was budgeted at 2.649 million. It was really presented as 2.749 million. So there was 100,000 that was removed on paper. And that goes on throughout those lines, including the high school line at 4.7 million. There was about 500,000 removed from that line between the presentation and the actual budget. So those are important things to note because some of the work that we had to do in terms of cleanup was not just sort of taking last year's budget as it was written, but kind of starting from ground zero and saying, well, who do we actually have? How much does that actually cost? And putting those actual figures in. So it's tricky sometimes when you look at, for example, the high school classroom teacher line at 4.712, that next year it's proposed at 4.995. While it looks like that's a $282,000 increase, it's also a cleanup of the subtraction of 500,000 on paper. So it's also includes the reduction of that position and the data person who are in those. So it's not as easy as sort of taking last year, saying it's 4.7, and just going forward and saying, oh, it's another 200. There's complications in there because of the work that we've had to do in order to adjust and clean. So, with that clarification, that's where we're at for this coming year. It's been a tremendous amount of work. Again, I thank so many people who have been involved in putting this together. I think our mission, as we stated in the bullet points way back in the beginning of the presentation, was to be able to present a budget that is lean, that is still make sure that we're providing all of the educational opportunities that we possibly can, that focuses more on administrative and coordination kinds of things and less on sort of classrooms and the day-to-day life of a child, and gets us to a place where we can reasonably come in and still provide the best services possible while recognizing the extreme financial difficulties that we're in, that we've been in, but hopefully this puts us back in a place where when we look at things like E&D and we look at how emergency money is used, that it isn't used as a regular part of how we fund the district, it's used for emergencies. So if we can get back to a stable place, and it's something that is difficult, it's going to require more folks taking on more responsibilities in a variety of different ways for the next year or so. And then my hope is that, as I said way back on my very first meeting, that we turn over the district to new leadership in a way that they're able to build on a more stable, solid foundation and take us forward over the next several years.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Marcus. I'm now going to ask for a vote to open the public hearing on school budget.
Motion?
Second.
Okay. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Ms. Stafford?
Yes.
Mr. Ralphie?
Yes.
Mr. Tressel, yes. Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. McCullum?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Ms.
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Okay. So we have now opened the public hearing on the school budget. So for those people who are interested in coming up and asking questions or making comments, I just ask that you state your name.
You want to ask the state reps?
Yeah, do the state reps or the state senator have anything they'd like to speak on first? I know you guys are busy folks.
Do you have $100 bills or just?
You know, I'm printing them as we speak, right? Good evening, I'm Allison Sullivan Almeida, as you stated. I want to say thank you to everyone that came out tonight. A packed room, as I didn't even notice all the people over there. So, as you guys know, we're taking up our fiscal year budget. We will be having our initial hearing next Wednesday. So my hope was to have this meeting after that meeting, but unfortunately the state is always lagging behind our local communities, as you guys know. So we always know that these are the projected numbers, and the hope is that after the debate in the House and also the debate in the Senate, the numbers will increase. You know, I know Senator Brady and myself, as well as the other delegates from Hanson, always advocate for 100% regional transportation. We know that we need to look at the special education circuit breaker, of course. You know, as many of these teachers know, more and more students are becoming in need of special education, and the cost that it is affecting every budget across every city and town is something that we need to take a deep dive into. So I have filed legislation, I've supported legislation, I know Senator Brady as well has supported legislation that will look into how we fund that, because the 75% reimbursement is not enough by far. And I hear from not just the officials, but also residents, and I believe Senator Brady probably does as well. Regional transportation, it's not you guys' fault. It was a promise from the state that the state didn't fulfill. And so that is something that we've always advocated for. And I want to clarify that I know there was some misinformation put out there when we took up a sub-budget under the Fair Share Amendment, when everyone took a vote a few years back, that the money would come back to our local cities and towns, right? Whether it be for the roads or for education. And there was this idea that we were going to 100% reimburse regional transportation, but what the state actually did is it looked like that, but then once we took up our actual budget, they decreased the amount that they put into the Fair Share Amendment. So we were still at, I believe it was only 80% reimbursement, which is not fair to you guys when you're looking at your budgets and trying to do your budgets, and it's not fair to the residents of communities who thought that regionalizing would be a benefit to our cities and towns. So we are always advocating for 100% regional transportation. Hopefully, based on the budget that we're seeing, that maybe come to fruition this year. But again, that is something that I want to make sure that everybody knows that Rep. DeCoste, Rep. Sweezy, and Senator Brady and myself have always advocated for, because we see it and we hear you guys. If there's any questions you have for us or any asks that you have for us going into the budget debate, we're always available to, whether it be by phone, email, or a meeting. And that goes to the constituents and teachers too. We want to make sure you guys all know that we're available to you if there's a concern that you're seeing that maybe the school committee is not relaying to us or that we're not seeing. We want to make sure that you guys know that we're available to have a meeting or to hear your concerns as well. So Senator Brady, I don't know if you have some things to say.
Thank you, and as was mentioned, the governor just presented her budget. We'll be reviewing that. It goes to the House of Representatives, then it comes to the Senate later, so we have time to make some changes and adjustments if needed. Obviously, we've been fighting to get regional transportation at 100%. It hasn't happened yet. We always make amendments to the budget. We don't always get to that goal that we'd like to get to, but I do serve on the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm having a meeting with my chairman this week coming up, and we have a public hearing coming up as well, so we'll kind of get a better handle on things and where we stand financially. Healthcare is one of the biggest costs across the Commonwealth, and it scares us all in Medicaid and all of that, and we have to pay for that. It's a very difficult situation. Some of the federal cutbacks that we've had to try to reimburse, and like you and I and our residents, we have to balance our checkbooks. Unlike the federal government that can deficit spend, so we got to live within our means. But because some people say, oh, why don't we spend down the rainy day account? But we got to keep that savings account to prepare for the next couple of years, because we don't know what's going to happen, So, but we are both always available. So please, anybody from the board or the residents need to contact us, please let us know. And if we have to come back and go over things, we'll have a better handle once we go over the governor's budget, and then that goes to the House and the Senate. We'll have time to maybe hopefully make some adjustments, so.
And I do want to apologize for Rep. DeCoste and Rep. Sweezy. They had prior commitments tonight, so you get the both of us.
Well, we thank you for your support.
Thank you very much.
Do you guys have any questions for us? No? Perfect.
Thank
But you
you.
guys know where to reach us.
Thank you.
Congratulations
Yeah.
on the interim. You're doing a fantastic job, so.
Working on it.
As you know, there's another community that faced a severe deficit a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else, but they have a new superintendent and new leadership over there, so hopefully they're moving in the right direction. So there is light at the end of the day and the end of the tunnel, and it's unfortunate that this community is going through a tough time right now, so.
Thank you.
But again,
Thank you.
in any other people at the state level, the governor's office, if they haven't already been meeting, because a lot of the comptrollers and everyone else is meeting with that community, so please let us know if you're not getting the answers that you need from the governor's office as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And anybody, I know a lot of you have my contact, but if anybody needs, I'll leave some business cards, contact my office. By the way, to let everyone know, my chief of staff, Al DiGirolamo, who's been with me from day one in '08 when I was the rep of Walker and at 11th grade, he recently retired, and he was playing him from putting up with me all the years. And unfortunately, I lost another good friend, Donna McCon, who was my second in command. Her husband's had some tough health issues, he's in a wheelchair, so she retired. So we have a new gentleman, Tobias Collins, who used to work in the school system, who worked for the Red Cross, he's my new chief staff. I have a new person coming on second in command, his name is Jason, he'll be coming on next week, and I got some more other people added, so, they're getting used to the game as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we also have some representatives from Whitman-Hanson here. If anyone from the Select Board, FinCom, or the Town Administrator would like to speak. Ms. Otina? Oh, Mr. Evans is hopping the line. Justin, Ms. Otina had her hand up first, so
Yeah.
be a gentleman, won't you?
Okay, Kathleen Otina, 344 Washington Street, Vice Chair of the Whitman Finance Committee
Oh,
this year.
apologies,
It's
sorry.
okay. My question is pretty simple. Fiscal '25 was inaccurate, fiscal '26 was inaccurate. Do you now have an accurate fiscal '25 budget and an accurate fiscal '26 budget that the FinCom can have to compare the fiscal '27 requests against?
We are working on it.
Okay.
We will
Thanks.
have, we have the end-of-year reports and things like that. We have the audit from '24 that's been done. The next thing is, as I continue to ask Mr. Wells to do the impossible, is to get all of those specific things. And that literally, we had that conversation. I think the first thing that Matt said to me this morning is, I need to do a full analysis of every single thing. So we'll have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'll tell you is that I love document 3. I know it's multiple pages, but it gives me the details that
Yeah.
I like to,
Yeah.
if it's accurate, when it's accurate.
It's accurate.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Thank you. Justin Evans, Whitman Select Board. I think I've spoken at the last couple of these, so you guys probably know what I'm going to say. Whitman is still early in our budget process. At this point, over the last few years, we've started with a baseline 5% projection for the school assessment. When Mary Beth Carter, our town administrator, presented to the Select Board a few weeks ago, we started with that same 5% assumption. That 5% assumption, just for round numbers, it was a roughly $20 million assessment last year, 19 point something. 5% of that is $1 million. Whitman's total new revenue that we're projecting right now is about $630,000. So that 5% starts us in a hole where we'd have to cut from what we funded other departments at in fiscal '26. If you've listened to our meetings, you've probably heard Sean Kane, a member of the board, talking about other places to start. Rather than start with a 5% assessment, look at some sort of a revenue sharing strategy. I think a lot of districts do this, maybe not as many regional districts, but a lot of school districts do this, where the belief is just that if the town's projecting $1 million in new revenue, some percentage goes to the schools, some percentage goes to the town, and you build the budget to there. At our last meeting, we talked about what it would take to get to grow both the school budget and the non-school portion of the town budget at the same rate. It's about a 60-40 split. The Select Board hasn't voted on anything. We're not locked into that number, but that is where we're looking at right now, where, of our conservative projection right now, but $630,000, about 60% of that would be district growth and 40% would be town growth. There is hope that as we get commitments in for, excise tax commitments, other projections for revenue that may go up. Mary Beth is probably not happy with me hoping that money's going to come down the line, but that's just where we're at right now. So that 5% is optimistic from the budget that we're preparing at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question.
Laura Kemet,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Just for clarification, a regional school district's obligation is to meet the needs of the children, and we are not bound by Proposition 2.5 or the levy. That's my understanding of the law. So if we're being asked in any way to follow, of course, we want to respect something, but not at the risk of not meeting or doing financially risky things as we have in the past. So has anybody had a dialogue with people who are formulating things at the town level of the risks that some of the proposals in the past have caused us? I mean, so essentially,
Mr.
and
Chair.
where we're going forward, where we're going to need to go forward. I mean, we have asterisks on this for a reason,
We had a really great meeting yesterday with Ms. Carter and
Dr.
with
Kowalski.
Dr. Kowalski, sorry.
Yep.
Mr. Wells and Mr. Tressel and I met to talk about sort of where we're at, what this is going to look like, and had the same sort of conversation that Mr. Evans just shared. And so we continue. And I think, to your point, we have to provide as best as we can within the means of the district what we need to do for kids. So that we will continue to advocate for.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Kemet?
Hi, Laura Kemet, Chair of the Hanson Select Board, and we're looking forward to
Yes.
meeting with you in Hanson as well to have similar conversations. And I think, the difficulty this year, every year we have difficulties. I feel like it's a bit like Groundhog Day, but this
2 days
year, the difficulty is that we've got some trust to rebuild, collectively. And I have to tell you that tonight I sat here and I really felt like I had the clearest picture of the school budget that I have had in years. Years. The detail. And I thank you for that. And I know that it was a Herculean effort, and I can appreciate that many people contributed to it, but it is so heartening because it's much easier to advocate for a budget that you understand, that you believe in, that you think has got clarity, and that you know the tires have been kicked on.
Right.
So, I really appreciate it, and of course, it's a difficult year, and we'll do the best we can with what we have, and look forward to having a conversation with you. But welcome, and thank you for all of your hard work, and I thank the school committee, because I know this has been a particularly difficult year. Again, every year is difficult, but this one might be one for the books. So I appreciate you guys sticking to it, and through it, and having some of those difficult conversations. And I want to mention, that I can see a cultural change happening already, which is quite refreshing. Even just having the listening session that we had, although it was not well attended, and there's not much we can do about that, but just having that spoke volumes about the change in culture, and that there's more engagement, more listening, and it can only get better from here. So I thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, just a quick question. Kathleen Trask out of Whitman. I noticed in the budget, in our reimbursements, the charter school reimbursement, with an increase of reimbursement of 65%. I am a former charter school parent that we chose for our daughter to leave the charter school system and come to Whitman-Hanson for high school.
Yep.
So kind of the opposite of what's happening in that budget, because if the reimbursement has increased, that's an indicator to me that we have more students choosing to leave and go to charter, because of the increase in reimbursement, that says more have left.
That's
So more
correct.
are in the lottery, more are getting selected in that lottery. So just as a long-term request, because the work you've done on the budget is tremendous. It is a large task. You've put the work in, and as a parent, I appreciate that you've put that work in. But I ask that as a unit, we think about how do we keep our schools strong
Right.
and make sure that we're enticing students to want to be here versus going to a charter school and leaving to go out of district. Some have needs that take them out of district, and you've got to do that, and I support that. But there are things that we can do here to make our district strong enough so that they're not looking to go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
just wanted to put that out as a long-term goal for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Ms. Niffen?
I think an important part of that is last spring, the Department of Education upped South Shore Charter's cap by somewhat 200 and some odd students, something like that. And that's troubling and problematic, because if the cap stays where it is, then the lottery system and things like that, it does make it more difficult for students to leave. But with a cap increasing by that much, it makes it much easier. I don't know if there's anything that we as a school committee can do, people in the public can do, to reach out to the Department of Education and say, hey, that's not cool. But that is definitely a factor, that, and we talked about it last year on this committee, so.
Thank you, Hillary.
I think that
Oh,
vote, yeah,
Ms. Hill?
the vote for that was taken already, and I think we talked about it after the vote had been taken, past tense. You can write in and prevent more, that's pretty much what you can do.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Come on up, Ms. Byers.
Thank you. Dawn Byers, 20 Russell Road. Thank you, Dr. Marcus, for this amazing presentation and your transparency and the work you've done in such a short time. I actually have 3 points, so I hope you will give me the moment to first to ask a question that I had been asking for years on the committee, which digs into the transparency. So your summary here, at some point, once you have all of the line item detail, is it possible to see the supporting budget detail with these 4 categories that I've asked for in the past, which is the position the person holds in the district on
Yep.
payroll, their salary,
Yep.
the building that they're in, and that funding source. So I've seen local communities, I've shared it with committee members. I think you've all been aware of this before. So for example, simply the position might be a grade 3 teacher, the building they're in, their salary, and the funding source. And it might be, funding source would be a revolving account, if it's food services, or a grant, or operating budget. So I think that will go a long way in extending the public confidence and the trust that I know you're giving us already.
Sure.
Second point, 5%. So why do we talk about a 5% increase to the assessment? I'm here to stand and explain that in 2019, I was appointed to a budget override evaluation committee in the town of Whitman. I was a new school committee member, and Whitman decided maybe we need an override, maybe we don't. So the genesis of 5%, why is it not 4? Why is it not 6? John Madden was the former financial director of the town of Duxbury, and his report was general expenses of a town go up 2.5%, but you can expect your school budget to go up 5% because schools have education expenses, specifically special ed, which you've clearly outlined the need for that. So was never a 5% assessment increase. It was a 5% increase to the school budget, is what the towns should be planning for in their own funding. I appreciate that you, this budget sort of falls within those lines, but I hope as 10 committee members, I know you will always put students first. So put that 5% second and just focus on the needs. My last question and point is about capital expenses. And there is an expense, while it's small, it's monthly, it's about $700. It comes out to maybe $10,000 a month. And the former superintendent explained to me last year this was for pumping the septic tank at Hanson Middle School. And I talk about capital because I would like the committee to be aware, if there are any capital expenses that the district is paying for out of your budget that perhaps should be identified as a town expense. I think that specific expense through Weston and Sampson, and it came up because it was a prior year's bill and it had to be paid and it was so important, but it was so small at the time and nobody would really pay attention. $700, what is it? But it's month after month after month. Apparently, that system needs to be pumped. Whether it's routine maintenance is one thing, but if it's a failure of that system, it's structural, it's infrastructure, it needs to be addressed. So I wanted to bring that back to you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, Ms. Hill?
I just want to bring up something. So 5%, we can look at the approved budget every year and increases the overall budget. So if we were to look at what Madden had said, and that was said to avoid an override, was 5%. We look from when we start to implement that, so it comes out, they do the committee in 2019, they present in 2020, so it represents itself for the first time in 2021 as a 5.52 increase to that budget. They fall from that year after year. The first year, it falls away from that. This is just to prevent an override. Falls away from that, 1.71. The next year, 2.2. The next year, 1.59. Then the 4% was 0.26 and 2.40. Compound that, I bet you'll find your $4 million, essentially. If you look at this, there is a responsibility of the towns to deal in good faith, Year after year, they've misrepresented that it's 5% of the assessment. It was never. And if we look at reasonable increases throughout almost every other town, you're going to see it's roughly 5% or more. So it's a school district that we're doing, not an assessment to each town. So we do want to be respectful, and if we can make it less, of course. You know, if somebody's got magic and they can do that, of course you're going to do that, but we don't want to neglect our responsibilities to meet needs and we want to, again, future-proof this school, future-proof it in terms of we're making students that are making a great future for our country, and also future-proof it so that we aren't risking circuit breaker usage and the ability to have our bond rating healthy so that we can build, at a cost-effective way. We want to make sure that we're moving forward responsibly. It is easy when you're in a regional school for it to seem like it's not part of the town, but it is. We are servicing the town. So sometimes it is the place that you pick on, but it costs more not to fund this. We're your best option. To fund us means we're not sending people out to charter schools or other schools. We're not outsourcing as much. So it's a smarter financial path forward. But I wanted to point that out, that we really haven't been funding it appropriately.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Jen?
Hi, Jen Roback, 879 Bedford Street, Whitman. My question is about athletics. You didn't really touch on that too much.
Thank you, yes.
Last year, there was a significant increase to families in terms of fundraising, because it's not just the sports fee that we had to increase. most of the people paying for all the fundraising are those same parents that increased their fees. It was significant. And when I looked at the budget, it appears the AD is getting a pretty significant increase. And I thought that we were going to have an overview of the athletic budget to see where we are at and what the deficit was, the fundraising, is everything on par? Is there going to be an increase to the fees next year? There was a fee for swimming this year that was not a fee in the past, like you had to pay for the pool. I know you didn't have to pay for the pool in the past, and it wasn't going from a $200 pool fee, it went from a $0 pool fee to a $400 fee.
Okay.
That's a lot for families, and I just think being upfront about that now is important.
If I may.
Yep, absolutely.
It's literally the note that I have on my paper that I forgot to say. We talked at the last school committee meeting and at the budget subcommittee meeting about athletics and about the difficulty in the $250,000 cut to the coaches line and what's the impact then on the students. And so you're sort of sharing anecdotally, well, here's the impact. And we've heard that from lots of folks. So right now, in the budget, the same number that was generated for this year, $100,000, is in the budget moving forward. That being said, when we think about best success for our students and what we need to be able to do, that's one of those things that we need to really think about as a priority. And how do we deal with that? How do we make sure that the stories that we heard about students having to fundraise and all that can be dealt with in a better way? I've spoken to Mr. Rogers about that, the athletic guy, not the, sorry, bad joke. And he's given us some very specific detail on exactly how much it costs. And we need to sort of look at that and figure out, is there any way that we can fix that? Probably not to the extent that we were, when it was a $350,000 line. There's almost no way. But can we do something that provides some version of relief? And that's in the discussions, I think, that the committee needs to have moving forward. To clarify, the line above the coach's salary line is simply the salary of the athletic director, period. So it isn't anything else. So that's that only went up because we get raises.
And then just as a follow-up, I know that when I was in high school, a varsity sport received a letter. And I know this is something minor, but going forward, I think it's something this district really needs to work towards putting back in place. Receiving a piece of paper that says you played a varsity sport and that's your letter is really kind of sad when they're thinking, and especially those sports that are playing with Silver Lake, when they go to their banquets, Silver Lake is getting a letter and Whitman-Hanson is getting a paper. So if you're going to ask parents to pay such a significant fee, that's something that I think should really be looked at. And I know that that's also a big part of the budget, and I'd rather see them play a sport than have a letter, but I think that's something to work towards.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I didn't know that either.
I didn't know that. I have a letter. From him.
All right. Any other comments, anything from the committee? Okay. Oh,
I guess just one comment. So the athletics, I did bring up the athletics the last time with the subcommittee, and it is truly my belief that school goes beyond the final bell. It is my belief that keeping the kids engaged here versus somewhere else, that keeping the kids, and I'm actually not talking about the kids who are going to be the varsity athletes. I'm talking about the kids who are on the end of the cross-country team, the kids who have a social place that connects them to the community is so valuable. And I know that I did get a couple of text messages from students because they were raising I believe $900 they were asked to raise privately to play basketball along with along with the fee, kind of blew my mind. Those kind of sports should be accessible to all the students. They should all have access to that. You want a school that encourages people to come, that encourages academic success. You want people connected to the building, feeling a sense of community within here. And athletics will give that to a lot of kids. And again, it's not the varsity players all the time. It's the kids who can't make varsity who find a place somewhere else within that. And I think that there is a dollar value certainly that we're going to assign to that, and I appreciate that, but I think it goes significantly beyond that.
Ms. Blackman? Oh, and then Sniffen.
So I have a few of the line items that I have questions about.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily looking for answers tonight because I don't want to put you, Johnny, on the spot, but
It's okay.
if it's possible. So I actually went through and numbered my pages because it just made sense to me.
Well, I'm glad you did.
You know, because you made that comment. So
Yeah, you're right.
the first page of the line budget, which is the 20th page in the, where we have the district-wide superintendent salaries,
Yep,
you have interim salary in principal line.
correct.
So what I want to know is that, I mean, whether it's you or somebody else who's on as the interim,
Yep,
we're going to have to pay that person.
correct.
That means we're also going to have to pay somebody to be the principal at the Duval.
Correct.
We're going to have to pay somebody to be the assistant principal at Duval. So having that FY '27 blank seems
It's-
like
it's
a
not-
little bit of a mislead.
Yeah, it's not blank. It's that because, and again, this is a tricky one, because we're in this funny place where we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. But we had to make an assumption, and so we put in the line that goes for somebody named Dr. Marcus, a reasonable salary for a superintendent that's less than what you would have budgeted for a regular superintendent, 190. And then for the principal of Duval, that is now carried for the acting principal at a reasonable salary, and so on, assistant principal, and so on. So it's all in the lines, but again, it's all assumptions based on best guess of what's going to happen. If the committee chooses to go in a different direction for FY '27, then obviously that figure that's in the principal line simply gets moved to the superintendent line. And it will anyway, because once everything is said and done, if depending upon how things happen, that line will shift.
Okay, so.
But sorry, let me clarify again. In order to pay the acting superintendent right now, either you have to move my whole salary, out of the line it's in and over to the superintendent line, or leave it where it is until it's determined what actually is specifically going to happen, and then put it in the right place. So depending upon what happens, you'll see a number in that line that equals the superintendent's proposed salary for '27.
So we have seven schools, right?
Yep.
Seven principals, basically, plus a superintendent. So you're telling me that 8 people are figured into that other line?
Into the principal line?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that was a
Yeah.
clarification I
Yeah,
wanted.
no, I'm glad you asked, because when you look at, and you'll get the actual payroll breakdown with all of the specific people and all that to that, I think it was Dawn's question. So we're going to have that as well, and you'll see sort of the highlighted folks that we're talking about in terms of who won't be here, but then you're also going to see those shifts. And again, it's dependent upon the will of the committee
Sure,
at some point.
that's fine, I just wanted to make sure we were accounting for all
Right.
8 positions, not just 7.
Nope, it's
Okay,
there.
on the next page, if you flip the page, the top page, which is
Yep.
the 22nd page, Library and media, that
Oh,
last
thank you.
section down there,
Yep.
every building, it looks like, has somebody in there except Whitman Middle School.
Correct.
Is there a reason that the Whitman Middle School doesn't deserve to have anybody working in the library?
We just, Mr. Frost. I mean, he can speak to it, but, and feel free to speak to it, Mr. Frost, but basically, it has to do with the specialists in each of the buildings, and when the cuts were made in November, the Whitman Middle School was able to cover all of the electives, or what do we call them? Yeah, go ahead. You can probably do a better job than me.
I'm advocating for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. We originally, both Hanson Middle and I, over the past couple of years, had library paras, which, did a bunch of various things in the library for, Chromebooks, checking out books, doing a whole lot of, miscellaneous tasks. As Dr. Marcus said, with the cuts that just happened, I lost that position. Hanson Middle, and maybe Mr. Bellis can speak to as well, ended up retaining because that was one of the related arts. So that teacher is also teaching as well. We didn't need that in our related arts section for the rotations.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Frost.
The very top line on that next page for course reimbursement, it says $90,000.
Correct.
According to teacher contract, it's $95,000. So,
It's interesting, is that we actually corrected that. Thank you so much. Mr. Farrell pointed that out at least 2 weeks ago, and we fixed it, so I'm not sure why it's showing 90. But you're correct. So,
okay, so, I'm sorry, I did go over this with a fine tooth comb.
no, that's good. I'm glad you did.
If you flip the next page, high school guidance salaries is a difference of $91,000. That sounds like a lot, and they're not getting that much of a pay raise, so we don't have that many people working in high school guidance.
I will look back
That-
and check the payroll lines, but I guarantee you that that is because somebody was not in the correct line.
So somebody probably wasn't accounted for in FY '26.
Not accounted for. Their salary was put into psych salaries or something else where it needed to be put in the correct place.
Okay.
But I'll check just to make sure.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work everyone has done to get us this far. The only other thing that I'm going to make as an absolute request is if we can find some way to get a grant writer, I think that would be a massive help to our district. I think that would bring in far more money than it would ever cost us. And my understanding is a lot of them will work on some sort of a pay-as-you-go, get money in type of a thing.
Yeah,
So
great idea.
I think that would be very beneficial for us. And I don't want to call the towns out necessarily, because I don't know enough about town finance to do that. But when I do look at the amount of money that is put into, that gets voted on later on, and it looks like it's $2 and $3 million that is put aside in each of those budgets from surplus funds. Help me out, what's the real?
Free cash.
Free cash.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I just maybe don't have the right understanding of free cash, but it feels like there might be a little more wiggle room in there to help out the schools.
The kids.
And support the students rather than putting the money into a rainy day fund all the time. So just some of it, I would like to appeal to the towns to consider that possibly.
Okay, Ms. Hill?
Yeah, and just to follow up, and thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Blackman, sorry.
Jeez.
I can't believe I did that. I'm sorry. That wasn't your name when we were kids.
No?
It's not her name now.
Never.
Good song, though.
Oh, okay.
Shh, don't tell my husband.
Back on topic. To apply, it is a policy that you don't use, or, that you don't use free cash for your reoccurring, and that's a good policy, but when it's only a policy that you're applying to our children, that's a problem. And we went in for an override, and it seems like only our children got hit by that override. And that's a problem, when you can find money in the DPW by increasing, to get extra staff in your DPW by increasing your trash rates. And after the citizens said, don't hire anymore, we're going to do an override, and you only apply that very strict, rigid process to only our children, and then we find that parents are the ones that are paying that extra tax. I look at these fees, these extra fees, and children are paying it in their future. So I would ask that, again, begin to act in good faith. I am saying the select boards have not acted in good faith. I would ask them to begin to. I've been listening to some of the presentations, and it's been disappointing. Thank you.
Oh, and then Hillary, yep, and then Ms. Fox, yep.
Sorry, I wanted to go back. I imagine that this presentation is available on the website or will be available.
Should be,
It
yeah.
is it's on the website now.
So I'd like to ask, Dr. Marcus, you sent us something from Bob Rogers about the athletic department.
Yes.
I think that should be made available to parents and families as well.
Sure.
If I may, when I was looking at this, just to give people an idea, because I think, and Warren, you spoke about it a little bit too, our kids are similar ages, and so we've got, and I said this last time, where most of what I heard this year was the budget for athletics, and I can't believe they don't cover uniforms. I can't believe, and if families see what the budget, forget about the cut to the budget, just in general, what the athletic budget never covered in our district, it's pretty, there's some things on here that I'm not sure if they're covered in other districts, but the mandated football equipment reconditioning is not something the athletic department budget covers. So to me, that's wild, right? Like, that, well, it says it right there, they don't.
I know, I saw that,
So,
and I was questioning.
And I think having more information from Mr. Rogers and maybe him being here to, for us to really determine what we need to do and the path we need to go with that budget, because to Rosemary's point, it is another tax on kids and their
Working
parents.
families, yeah.
Right? Those of us who paid for full-day kindergarten, those of us who are paying, you're going to end up paying just as much for a high school sport as you are for your youth sports, or club sports for that matter. So making this available so people can see,
Sure.
I think, I also, and I brought this up last year, and I'm going to say it again, our students who go to South Shore Voc Tech do not pay a user fee to play sports. They do not pay, and I want to be clear, sure, they do fundraising, just like the kids here do fundraising, but it's not fundraising to get a uniform and get a pair of shorts that fit you. And so I think that's really troubling, and I understand that athletics is not the end-all and be-all of a school district, but it did take such a significant hit, and it was a part of our budget that was never actually funded to begin with. And to Warren's point, I echo all of that, like, being involved, right? And I worry that we're going to become a district that's like, well, if we're charging for sports and we need to come with money, now we're going to charge kids to be in clubs and to do these things. And I am vehemently against that. And I don't want to get there. So I think the more information that we can give to the community and say, look, this is where we're at, this is what happened, maybe it'll end in a positive way as opposed to, us kind of clawing to try to get back there. So I would just ask that this document be included with this.
Sure.
And then perhaps a request to have Mr. Rogers at a meeting in the future so we can really ask him questions about this.
And through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Rogers has asked to come to a future meeting, so he'd be more than happy to sort of talk through the details.
Perfect.
Thanks.
And it might be better to wait
Miss-
till,
oh, oh, oh.
it might be better to wait till he comes before we release that?
No, I think it should be us.
Yeah. All right, Ms. Fox?
Might answer the question.
Sure. My name is Mary Fox. I live in Washington Street. I have apartment 5. I have just a few things to say. I'll try and stay under 3 minutes. Number one, if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. I sat quiet, didn't write anything, was tempted, wasn't going to speak, couldn't resist. The bottom line is this. I want names. I want to know what were the consequences, except to our kids. I say our. I don't have a kid there. But as far as I'm concerned, as a United States citizen, whether they're citizens or not, I don't care. They're kids. I can proudly say that my school districts never stinted on the kids. And if we went on austerity, which I'm not sure you even know the meaning, guess what? We froze salaries. How dare you ask parents who are up against everything, food bills, this thing, that thing. And yes, I realize teachers may be parents or whatever. I'm sorry, as a teacher in New York City, we took a freeze rather than see our kids because we knew they couldn't go without. We were also the last district in New York State to close for COVID. You know why? 1 million kids would have been out in the street or home with their grandmoms who could be more susceptible. Guess what? That was a mistake. At least our chancellor had the backbone to stand up until he was overwhelmed by media. My philosophy is, we pay enough, we got beautiful schools, I want people in them. I want them in from 9, I want reasonable hours too, till 9 at night, because they should never be empty. And I told my students, Martin Luther King would not want a day off where you're going shopping or pestering your grandma. And guess what they said? She'd be telling the truth. I am telling the truth, that's all I know. As far as I want to know, who's on that payroll that cost our kids, that we lost teachers, paras, all kinds of people? I want names. The next thing is, I know I'm old-fashioned, but when you mismanaged public money, when you hurt kids, and believe me, cuts in education hurt kids, you ought to pay. Pay. Women and children always seem to take the hit. Not so much men. My mother sent me to college. My parents never got out of high school. It wasn't because they weren't smart. It was because they had other circumstances. My philosophy, they sent all 3, my brother, sister, and I, all advanced degrees. Bottom line, they had the drive of an immigrant. My grandparents in Charlestown did not get jobs. My granddaughter looked it up. They were aliens. She goes, Grandma, no offense. I said, I'm not taking offense. People who expect the most from our schools, and we promised it, whether we're collecting lunch, milk money, I don't care if we serve them dinner. The bottom line is they're our future, not old people like me. I'm stepping off, and I don't think there'll be a dry eye when I do. The bottom line is this. I want the best. I'm willing to pay for it. Those state people, I guess they had to leave early. I pay huge taxes. I don't own a house. Don't need a house. I'm not a person of material things, but I am 110% for education. As far as teachers, hey, cops, firemen, everybody's getting a 2.5%. May I remind you, I'm not a person with numbers. You're signing 3-year contracts. You're also increasing their pensions. Now I hear they get medical. I do not get medical. Okay, my Social Security will be reduced. I wrote a letter. Here's what I said to them. Oh God, 25 years ago. I will probably not need, I get a pension. I will probably not need Social Security. Give it to those who do. And don't give old people all this kind of money. I do not need it. I give it away to charities. But I'll be damned if I'll be paying for something and not have it go where it goes. So here's what I want to know, and it's said in Facebook. Who's still on the salary that was involved in this debacle? Who is still on the, put it down in writing. Please don't write a eulogy for the man. We're in this mess because people did not do their job. And when you don't do your job, I want you out. It goes for teachers too. I don't believe in seniority. Yes, I earned it. I earned tenure. It took me 6 years. I wasn't the right face, the right faith, and they challenged me. I challenged them with the truth. Guess what? People that didn't think they had to come in on a Jewish holiday, I said, you made a mistake, the school stays open. I will be here. 2,000 kids saved my job. 2,000 petitioned and got my job. The union tried to take it. Why? I'm at the top. I came from Long Island. I'm Irish Catholic, not Jewish, and they didn't like it. I called them out. I'm calling on you now. There were only 2 people. You all gave them a contract. 2 people that said, no thumbs up. He needed security. Where's our kids' security? And I'm done. Same thing with the town. I listened to all of those people presenting budgets. Police want new holster, a new gun. Are you out of your mind? We are in debt. There is no progressive look. Look backwards, because our kids lost a whole year. And the next thing I want to know, don't ever think about firing a teacher, a parent, or anybody else. I was going to go to the bank for that, Ms. Shine. Christ, what does it take? That girl got up and said she was at the edge. 2 counselors went. My daughter is a counselor at Brockton. You need a counselor everywhere. Why? Because our schools were closed. And people, I asked my daughter, you collecting a salary? She goes, well, yeah, everybody is. We Zoom in. I said, what? Yes, I believe in good attendance. I don't believe in seniority. Just because you were there longer doesn't mean you're any better. I'm done. I'm done. I want to see the names. I want to see names by their salary. By the way, we did this in Long Island. A kid in a pizza parlor says to me,
Ms. Fox,
you
please keep talking. Okay, thank you very much.
well, hey, I listened for an hour at something, paper. Only God can make a tree. Stop with the paper. Publish the facts.
Okay.
Done.
Thank you.
I am more than done.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay.
Motion,
All right, so can we motion to close the public hearing on the school budget?
so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second? All right, Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Ms. Stafford?
Yes.
Mr. Rafi?
Yes.
Mr. Tressel, yes. Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. McCollum?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Blackman?
Yes.
Okay. We are going to go, we're going to vote to go into executive session. We're also going to go,
Do we have any public comment?
oh, I'm sorry, do we have any other public comment on the sheet? Thank you, TJ.
Public comment on each side of public comment?
No, we're good, okay. And what we're going to do is we are going to go into executive session, and we are only going to come out of executive session to adjourn. We're also going to take the executive session up in the comm room so that people can clear out and that so our staff can clear everything for tomorrow and not have to wait for us. So can I have a vote to go into executive session? Oh, I have to read the executive session. Apologies. So we have 2 executive sessions, one to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares for Unit D. And we're going to have an executive session to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. And that's to approve executive session meeting minutes for December 17th, 2025 and December 22nd, 2025. Could I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Ms. Stafford?
Yes.
Mr. Rafi?
Yes.
Mr. Tressel, yes. Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. McCollum? Yes. Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Blackman?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go into executive session. Thank you very much, everyone. Have
Thank
a
you,
great night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I use the pen?
Yes.